How difficult is it for you to come on the airwaves this morning with your leader, the Prime Minister, all over the papers for all manner of allegations about his private life?
I'm very happy to come on the airwaves, especially when I'm going to get to speak to you and Susanna.
Well, that's a nice way of swerving the question, if I might say so, Chancellor. Does it matter that there are these allegations about the Prime Minister? There is this suggestion that he's just a sort of Teflon character now. We all know about Boris Johnson and his private life, so when accusations are made against him, they do just bounce off him. Is that reasonable? I mean, does it matter if 20 years ago, when he was at The Spectator, he groped the leg of a journalist and she alleges that he did it to another woman at the same lunch? Do these accusations matter?
Well, look, you're trying to draw me into some personal allegations, and I've never commented on personal allegations before, and I'm not going to do that now. I don't think it would be appropriate, but what does matter?
Well, hang on, hang on, Mr. Javid, hang on.
Is the Prime Minister and is working on delivering for this country.
I get it, but hang on. Two cabinet members,
Michael Fallon
and Damien Green, had to resign their posts over exactly the same conduct. So when you say it's a private matter, it's not if it's true, is it? I mean, I know the Prime Minister denied the latest allegation, but given that two of your former colleagues from the cabinet had to lose their jobs over exactly the same thing, is it really private?
Well, what I'm saying is that I don't talk about personal allegations. I never have. I've never talked about them when they've been made about other people, and I'm not going to do that now. It'd be wholly inappropriate. These are personal allegations, and it's not right for me to get drawn into them.
No, but this is why I'm just trying to clarify what your idea of personal is, because if cabinet ministers have had to resign before over making unwanted advances to women, as in two cases, and now you have allegations of impropriety when the Prime Minister was Mayor of London involving a woman he was believed to be having an affair with, is that personal? In other words, can you say, look, this is just personal behaviour, or is it behaviour that now he's Prime Minister, given the repercussions for other cabinet members, becomes much more than personal, it becomes a matter of public interest? That's really the determination you have to make, isn't it?
Well, you're talking there about your two different things, two different sets of allegations. One are the first that you've started with are personal allegations. I'm not going to get drawn into that, and I've set out why. And then you've talked about other allegations that are out there about behaviour in public office. And the Prime Minister, as he has done, is absolutely right to answer those questions and has denied any kind of wrongdoing, has said that everything is within the rules, and no doubt that will be further looked at, as it should be. And I'm sure that will be absolutely clear that the Prime Minister hasn't done anything wrong. But, you know, when you asked me, or I was asked a moment ago by Susanna, does it matter that Boris Johnson is Prime Minister? It matters hugely, because we now have a leader of our country that is getting on with delivering Brexit and delivering on the people's priorities. That's what we're talking about at this conference.
Okay.
Whether it's delivering on schools, on health, on fighting crime, these are the big issues of the day.
And I accept you're not Boris Johnson, and we don't want to keep pounding this for the whole interview. There's lots of very important stuff to talk about. One final point, though.
Thank you.
It is putting your hand on a woman's knee under a table in a restaurant a resignation offence, as it turned out to be for two cabinet members, or is it not a matter that should concern anybody? In other words, do you think that kind of behaviour is acceptable? And if it is, why don't Michael Fallon and Damien Green get their jobs back?
Well, look, again, you're trying to draw me into these particular personal allegations about the Prime Minister, and I'm not getting drawn into that. If you're asking me sort of separately about, whether a man, whoever they are, should be touching a woman's knee without her permission, of course not. I mean, I think everyone knows that. I think that is clear, but I'm not commenting on these personal allegations.
Well, sorry, but Mr. Javid, that's exactly the point I was making right at the beginning of the interview. Does it matter? Does it matter? Because if it does, then it matters if it's the Prime Minister, doesn't it?
Well, you are implying that these allegations are true and correct, and I'm not getting drawn into them. These are, in my world, you know, when you have public figures, there will be allegations against individuals all the time. You know, I've had all sorts of allegations, get them every day. I get them on social media when I meet people and things, you know, but it doesn't make them true. And, you know, I don't think it's appropriate for people to comment on these kind of personal allegations, and I'm not going to do that.
Pretty extraordinary, Mr. Javid. Mr. Javid, but pretty extraordinary, though. This allegation comes from the partner of the current political editor of ITV.
You don't
Robert
believe
Peston.
it?
So when the Prime Minister says it's untrue, he is calling Robert Peston's girlfriend a liar. I mean, that's a pretty extraordinary state of affairs, isn't it?
Well, I think I've answered your question there. And what I have also said is that what really matters now is that we deliver on Brexit, that we deliver on the people's priorities. And one of those priorities, we've talked about, you know, health and schools and the need to fight crime. One other massive priority, I think, for people is upgrading our national infrastructure. And that's what I'll be talking about today when I get up on that stage behind me, about the need to have major new investment, a major step up in investment in our roads, in our digital networks, in our rail, and delivering on that.
OK, let me ask you, on October the 31st, which is now, we're about to head into October, so this is the month where this is all going to be happening. Boris Johnson is adamant we are leaving on October the 31st. Nobody other than Boris Johnson can see a way that that happens, given what has been going on in Parliament. How do we leave on October the 31st?
Well, hopefully we leave with a deal, and that's what we're very focused on. There's a good number of negotiation discussions that are ongoing as we speak. So hopefully we leave with a deal. If we cannot strike a deal, I think it's important to leave in any case and leave with no deal. It's not perfect, but it is appropriate that we leave on the 31st because, you know, this whole debate around Brexit, after over 3 years since the referendum, I think people just want to see us get on with it and deliver it at any
leave with no deal?
and that's what we'll do.
Yeah, but how do we leave, given that Parliament is not going to authorise no deal exit?
Well, it's passed legislation to force the Prime Minister to ask for an extension if a deal isn't forthcoming.
If we don't automatically apply for that extension, which is what we're supposed to do, and therefore defy the law, which Boris Johnson says he's not going to do, how do we actually leave with no deal on October the 31st, should that eventuality happen?
The legislation that Parliament has passed, of course, has made things more difficult, but we are clear. Our own policy is completely unchanged. We will be leaving on the 31st. We're also clear, so before you ask me the next question, let me anticipate it. We will be observing all laws, as any government should, at all times, but we are clear that we will be leaving on the 31st.
Right, I get it, but you guys...
And that's what we will do.
Mr Javid, with respect, you guys keep saying we're leaving on October the 31st.
Because that's your policy.
Nobody else can understand how you're going to be able to do it. Given that Parliament has said, no, you're not...
Well,
and given that you've already said you're not going to defy the law, therefore, by law, you would have to apply for the extension, nobody can quite work out what we're missing here. And Boris Johnson wouldn't answer it yesterday. You are the Chancellor, so you're one of the most powerful people in government. How do we leave on October the 31st with no deal? How do we technically do it if Parliament has said no and we haven't applied for any extension? How do we do it?
I'm not going to set that out now. It's part of our strategy to leave on October the 31st. We're not going to talk about that in public, you know, every step of the way. It wouldn't be right. What we are clear about is that we will be leaving on the 31st. And now, you know, Parliament has passed the law that you referred to. They may or may not pass some other law, and that's the right of Parliament. And it is also our duty to obey all laws, but it is also our policy, and we couldn't be clearer, to leave. Because,
but Mr Javid, if we have a situation in which if we have a situation where the Prime Minister has already been deemed to have acted unlawfully by the Supreme Court, is it not incumbent upon the government to reassure the public not just that you will obey the law, but to explain how? Because there are huge numbers of people who are desperate for the UK to leave the EU on October the 31st, and everybody is concerned that that is done legally and legitimately. So why are you keeping it a secret?
It's not about a secret. It's about having a strategy, sticking to it, and not talking about it in public at all times, and remaining absolutely focused on what we need, which is to leave the EU on October the 31st. Now, we are very focused on getting a deal. The key date for a deal will be at the time of the EU Council, their next meeting on October the 17th, 18th. And in those meetings, we certainly won't be asking for an extension. We'll be hoping that we can get an agreement on a deal. If for any reason we do not, if that happens, then we will set out what the next steps will be so that we can still leave on October the 31st. But until then, I want to see our energy being spent on both trying to get a deal and on no-deal preparations, so that just in case no deal happens, that we are as prepared as we possibly can be. That's what the people want to see.
Do you accept, finally, Chancellor, I mean, do you accept this is a very weird situation where we just basically have to trust you, right, that this is all possible? I mean, the British people are waiting here, listening to the Prime Minister, the Chancellor, the other senior members of government, just looking down cameras and saying, don't worry, we've got it all worked out. We have a plan that nobody outside of government can see is possible. I mean, it's an extraordinary state of affairs, isn't it? Where you just say, no, we've got it all worked out. We're keeping it all secret for now, but don't you worry. We've got a way to leave with no deal when nobody else thinks it's possible. It's just a baffling state of affairs.
Look, it is an unusual situation, of course, in our politics, and that concerns a lot of people. It concerns me. You know, we've tried, you would have seen in the last few weeks, we've tried twice to get Parliament to agree to have a general election. Let the people decide who should be taking the country forward, who should be delivering on Brexit, who should be delivering on their priorities. And I think for the first time in history, you've got an opposition which has turned down the opportunity to have a general election, not once, but twice. So if they don't want a general election, we've got to get on with governing. And one of the key things that we need to do is deliver on Brexit and deliver on the people's priorities. And that's exactly what we're going to do.